Hi students, we will do the second part of solving equations notes. This time we will move on from 2 steps to multi-steps, but we're going to keep all our variables still on one side of the equation. We'll move to when it's on both sides in the next set of notes. So we are actually continuing the notes from that blank set of notes I sent you on that first set of notes. So here's example 7. This one should be review. It's another example with fractions, so these are always good to do lots of. So just like before, we're always going to draw our line under the equal sign, and we're going to look and see where our variable term is. It's on the left. So step 4 says to get all of the constants to the other side. The constants that I have are 6 and negative 14. So that 6, we need to move to the other side to be with the negative 14, while our v, our variable, remains on the left. So I'm going to take a look at that 6, and I'm going to look in front of the 6, and I see that that 6 is positive, which means I'm going to do the opposite of that, which is to subtract 6 on both sides. I know there's a minus after the 6, but I don't care about that. I just care about what's in front of the 6. So let's see what happens when we do that. When I take away 6 from 6, that goes to 0. And let's bring down what we have left. On the left, we're going to bring down that negative 2/9 v. Bring down your equal sign. On the right, we're going to combine that negative 14 with that minus 6. Two negatives combine to make a negative that's further in the negative direction. So it's going to be negative 20. All right, so now I'm going to do step 5, which is to get rid of my coefficient or divisor. I have a number in front of my variable, which is a coefficient. Now, when that coefficient is a fraction, remember we learned an extra little thing to remember when it's a fraction. To get rid of a fraction coefficient, we're going to flip it and multiply it on both sides of our equation. When I flip a negative 2/9, it becomes a negative 9/2. So I'm going to multiply negative 9/2 on both sides. Notice when I flip a fraction, the sign of the fraction doesn't change. Now on the left side, whenever I multiply a fraction by its reciprocal, it's always going to equal positive 1. Remember, I can also multiply straight across to prove that. Negative times negative, of course, is a positive. 9 times 2 is 18. 2 times 9 is 18. 18 over 18 is 1. Or I can say 9 over 9 is 1 and 2 over 2 is 1, so all of this equals 1. 1 times v is just v. I don't have to put the 1 in front. And then over here on the right, we have to remember, well, how do I multiply a whole number by a fraction? Remember, you're going to put that whole number over 1, and then you're going to multiply straight across. First of all, we've got a negative 20 times a negative 9/2. Negative times negative is positive. So now we're going to multiply our numerators. 20 times 9 is 180. And for the denominator, 1 times 2 is 2. The very last thing we'll want to do is always reduce our fraction. 180 divided by 2, or 180 over 2, simplifies to 90. So our solution is 90. Remember how you can check this in your online graphing calculator? You can pull up that Desmos online graphing calculator and you can type this in, and it will make a vertical line that goes through the x-axis at 90. You may have to zoom out to see that 90, but it's there. Now, before we go into the new examples for today, I'd like for you to remember these 6 steps. These should be on your previous sets of notes, but they're also here if you'd like to write them down again. The step that we will not be doing today is step 3. So that will be for our notes next time. But we are going to be distributing when we have parentheses and combining like terms on each side. So those will be some new steps. So this is actually the first example in this set of notes. The last one was kind of a review. So we're starting our example numbers over at 1. So with this equation, we're going to draw our vertical line under the equal sign. Step 1 says distribute if we have parentheses. We don't have parentheses, so we're going to move on to the next step. The next step says combine like terms on each side of the equal sign. On the right side of the equal sign, I just have one term, so it's combined. I don't have to worry about that. On the left side, I've got 1, 2, 3 terms. Now, of those terms, some of them may be like. Remember, like terms have to have the same variable raised to the same power. We're not worried about that right now. But I can see that that y and that 4y both have a y. In front of the y, there is a 1 that's not written, but we can always add it in there. So to combine them, I'm just going to add them together. 1y plus 4y equals 5y. Excuse me. So we're just adding together that coefficient of 1 and that coefficient of 4. We also need to bring down that minus 7. Make sure the minus stays in front of the 7. I could, if I wanted to write this a different way, I could write it as the negative or minus 7 first and then followed by the 5y. Both of those are equivalent. Either one is fine. Let's just stick with what we've got. Bring down your equal sign and bring down the 13 from the right side. So now this looks very similar to our two-step equation. So if you'd like to pause the video and try to solve this on your own, because this part should be a review. Now we're on to steps 4 and 5. You can, and then press play to see how you did. But let's go ahead and keep going. We've got our variable on the left, that 5y. We're going to move our constants to the right. The constant we need to move over is that minus 7. So we're going to add 7, which is the opposite of minus, to both sides. Excuse me. If we add 7 to a minus 7, that makes 0. So we're going to bring down what we've got. We've got 5y on the left. On the right, 13 plus 7 is 20. The next step is to get rid of that coefficient. Remember, coefficients are connected to their variables through multiplication. So the opposite of multiplication is divide. We're going to divide both sides by that 5. And when we do that, 5 divided by 5 is 1. And 1 times y is 1y, or just y. On the right, 20 divided by 5 is 4. There's our solution. Remember, you can go ahead and check by putting this original equation into your online Desmos calculator, and it will make a vertical line that will go through the x-axis at 4. Example 2. Draw your line under the equal sign. Step 1 says distribute if we have parentheses. We finally have parentheses, so we're going to do that. What distribute means, it means take the number that's in front of the parentheses. In this case, it's the 3. Sometimes it helps to circle it. If that was a negative 3, I would want to circle the negative 3. And we're going to multiply it by every term in the parentheses. Make sure that you're multiplying. So let's see what this is going to look like. Watch your signs. So first we'll do 3 times a. That's 3a. Then we'll do 3 times 5, but there's a minus in front of the 5. So I want to think of that as like a negative 5. 3 times negative 5 is negative 15, and I can just write that as minus 15. Then we'll bring down the plus 19, the equal sign, and the negative 2 on the right. Make sure after you distribute, your parentheses should be gone. So that was step 1. Step 2 is to combine any like terms on each side. The right side is simplified because there's only one term. On the left side, though, I do see the like terms of negative 15 and positive 19. Those two are constants, and I can combine those together. Those would combine to make a positive 4. I'm going to bring down my 3a. Oops, sorry, I'm trying to stick with my colors. Let me go back and change that. Those combine to make a positive 4. I'm going to bring down my 3a. I'm going to bring down my equal sign and my negative 2. Now I've got a two-step equation. This is where you feel free to pause it and try to solve it on your own now that you're starting to get a little bit better. Our variable is on the left. We need to move our constants to the right. The constant we need to move is that plus 4. The opposite of plus 4 is minus 4, so we're going to subtract it on both sides. If I subtract 4 from a positive 4, I get 0. So now on the left, we've got 3a. We're going to bring that down. Bring down your equal sign. On the right, we've got a negative 2. and combined with a negative 4, together that makes negative 6. The very last thing is whenever we have a coefficient in front of our variable, we're going to divide both sides by it. So we're going to divide both sides by that 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 1 times a is 1a, or just a. Bring down your equals. On the right, we've got negative 6 divided by 3. Make sure you're not subtracting. Remember, always divide when you see that fraction bar. Negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2. There's your solution. Make sure to go back and check. Example 3. Let's draw our vertical line. Step 1, distribute if we have parentheses. We do have parentheses, so we're going to distribute. The number outside of the parentheses, it's not just 3, it's a negative 3. You got to look at the sign in front of it. So the number that we'll be distributing inside our parentheses will be negative 3 to both the 2r and to the negative 1. And remember, we're always multiplying when we do that. So let's go ahead and simplify everything. In front of all that is a negative 9, so I'm going to bring that down. Now let's go ahead and multiply that negative 3 inside. Negative 3 times 2r is negative 6r. Negative 3 times this negative 1 is going to be positive 3, so plus 3. Bring down your equal sign, bring down the negative 18. Really watch those negatives. If you have questions as we're doing this, write these down and you can ask me in class. All right, step 2, combine like terms on each side. The right side is combined, it's simplified. On the left side, the two terms that I have that are like are the negative 9 and the positive 3. Those are constants. So I'm going to combine those together because they're like, and those are going to combine to make a negative 6. When we're combining, we're adding, but we need to watch the signs. We also want to bring down, we also want to bring down that minus 6r, minus 6r. Bring down your equal signs and bring down that negative 18. Now we have that two-step equation, steps 4 and 5. This is where you could pause and solve on your own if you'd like. Our r, our variable term, is on the left, so we're going to move our constants to the right. The constant we need to move is that negative 6, so the opposite of that would be plus 6, or add 6 to both sides. When I add 6 to a negative 6, that makes 0, so we're going to bring down what's left. Make sure you bring down that negative or that minus in front of the 6r. Bring down your equals. On the right, negative 18 plus 6 is negative 12. Last step, get rid of that coefficient. Notice we've been getting rid of coefficients rather than divisors. You'll usually see coefficients other than divisors, but sometimes you'll have divisors. We've got a coefficient. To get rid of a coefficient, we're going to divide both sides by that coefficient, in this case negative 6. Negative 6 divided by negative 6 is 1. 1 times r is 1r, or just r. On the right, negative 12 divided by negative 6 is positive 2. All right, example 4. Go ahead and draw your line. Step 1, if we have parentheses, we need to distribute. We actually have two sets of parentheses, so we're going to distribute twice. Whatever number is right outside. Now, if I look at that first parentheses, there's not a number in front of it, so there is an implied 1. However, if I was to multiply a 1 inside, I would get the exact same thing. So this is an example of where those parentheses aren't necessary. So when we get to that part, we're just going to rewrite that. On the second set of parentheses, what's directly in front of the parentheses is a minus. A minus I can think of as a negative 1. So I'm going to, let me circle this so we can pay better attention. We're going to distribute a negative 1 inside. Now that will change those two terms, it'll only change their signs. So we need to be careful of both of these when we go down to the next line. So remember, that first set of parentheses was not even necessary. So we're just going to rewrite x minus 3 without the parentheses. Now we're on to the second set of parentheses where we're distributing a negative 1. Negative 1 times x is negative 1x. I can write it as 1x, negative 1x, or just negative x. Remember, I don't have to write the 1. You could if you want. Now we're doing negative 1 times that minus or negative 5. Negative times negative is positive, so that should be plus 5. Then we're going to bring down that plus 2x, equal sign 0. So this equation's got a lot of terms. The next step, step 2, says to combine like terms. The right side's already simplified, so let's take a look at the left side. Let's identify first our like terms. We've got 1, 2, 3 variable terms. Notice I circled the sign in front. So the first thing we're going to want to do is combine those terms. This first x, remember there's a 1 in front. Whenever we're combining like variable terms, all we're really doing is adding together the coefficients. So I've got a positive 1, a negative 1, and a positive 2. The positive 1 and negative 1 actually undo each other to make 0. So when I add up these 3, it's actually just going to equal 2x. So we'll bring that down, 2x. Now I've got my constants. And the constants that I need to combine are the negative 3 and the positive 5. Those two are going to combine to make a positive 2. We're just adding them together. So all those terms combine to 2x plus 2. Bring down your equal, bring down your 0. Now we've got our last two steps, which are the simple ones. Our variable term is on the left, so we're going to move that constant 2 to the right. And because it's positive, I'm going to subtract it from both sides. Negative 2 and a positive 2 make 0. So we're going to bring down what's left. We've got 2x on the left equals, and 0 minus 2 is negative 2 on the right. The very last step is to divide by that coefficient in front of the x, which is 2. We're going to divide both sides by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So we've got 1x, or x on the left. On the right, negative 2 divided by positive 2 is negative 1. So here's your solution. All right, this last example is pretty tough. There's a lot going on. You are welcome to write this down or not. If you're said, I've had enough and I want to end my notes here, go ahead. If you want to write this down, though, feel free. I probably won't give you one like this to do, but it's nice to always be able to do this kind of stuff. So on this one, we're going to draw our line. We actually have quite a few sets of parentheses. We also have a set of brackets, which is another type of inclusion symbol, but we treat them just as parentheses. So let's go through each set of parentheses and see what we need to distribute. We're going to start with our innermost set of parentheses, which are these parentheses right here. The number right outside those parentheses is this negative 3. So that's where we're going to start. So let's go ahead and start by distributing that negative 3 inside to the G and to the negative 5. And we'll bring everything else down. So we can go ahead and bring down the 5 times parentheses G minus 7 plus 2 bracket G. Now we'll distribute the negative 3. Negative 3 times G is negative 3G. Negative 3 times that negative 5 is going to be positive 15. Close bracket equals 0. So now what we're going to do is we're going to keep going. We still have some sets of parentheses. Sometimes you want to do them one at a time just to make sure that you're not missing anything and that you're being really organized. So let's go back to the bracket. Now the brackets, which are also like parentheses, we're going to have to get rid of those. The number right outside that is this 2. So we'll distribute that 2 to every term inside. We've got 3 terms here. Now, if you wanted to, you could combine the g and the negative 3g first and then distribute the 2, or we can just distribute the 2 and then combine them after. The other set of parentheses, we've got the 5 that we need to distribute to the g and to the negative 7. So on the next line, let's go ahead and distribute these. We'll start with the 5. 5 times g is 5g. 5 times negative 7 is negative 35. Next set of parentheses. 2 times g is plus or positive 2g. 2 times negative 3g is negative 6g. And 2 times 15 is positive 30. So now we're on to step 2, which says combine like terms. Let's go ahead and look at all of our variable terms. We've got a positive 5g, a positive 2g, and a negative 6g. To combine these, we're going to just add together their coefficients. So when I add 5 with 2, I get 7. But then I need to take 6 away from that, which is just going to give me 1g, or just g. Very cool. Notice its coefficient is 1, which is very nice. Now we're going to go ahead and look at our constants. We've got negative 35 and positive 30. If I combine those, I should get a minus 5. And this equals 0. And I'm not being consistent with my colors. I apologize. All right, there I fixed it. All right. We have our variable term on the left, that g. We've got to move our constants to the right, so that minus 5 we're going to move over by adding 5 to both sides. When I add 5 to a negative 5, I get 0, so all I have left on the left side is just g. On the right side, I've got 0 plus 5, which is 5. Notice, because my coefficient of g is 1, I'm actually done. I actually don't need to do that last step 5. So those are your notes. Hopefully you wrote down some questions or put stars next to the ones you need help with, and I'll go ahead and help you in class. See you then.